All right, let's talk about the second step of proofreading. You want to now read through your paper, checking your sentence structure. By that I mean, do you have a sentence that is complete? It has a subject, it has a verb, maybe it has an object. It could have some phrases like dependent clauses, independent dependent clauses. We'll get there. And you want to make sure that all of your sentences are properly structured. Let's talk some specifics here. The first thing I want to do is have you take a look at what types of sentence structures there are. There's one that you want. You want complete sentences. A complete sentence, as I said, it has a subject and a verb and an object, right? So the subject is doing something and they're doing it with something. You'll see in a minute. You want to avoid and correct sentence fragments. So you're going to be reading through your paper looking for sentence fragments. I'll give you some examples in a minute. And you want to look for run-on sentences because those are really tiring to the reader. And they need to be corrected and shortened, usually chopped into 2 or 3 or more sentences. All right, complete sentences. They have a subject and a verb, or a subject and a verb and an object. What do I mean by that? Here's an example. Here's some simple sentences. The student is writing. This is my key, right? This is the article, the word the. Usually nouns have an article in front of it, usually. The student is the noun or the subject. This is the verb tense. To write is the verb, but the student is writing. So you know this is present tense. And this is the verb formed, right? The ing. That's that makes it present tense. Okay, here's another one. The student is writing her paper. Now this one in blue here is the object. What is she writing? She's writing her paper. So those are correct, complete, simple sentences. Here's a compound sentence. The student is writing her paper, and then this bit in italics is a clause which explains the first part of the sentence. The student is writing her paper so she can turn it in on time. That's a complete sentence. It's compound. It's got the first part, the independent clause, and then the dependent clause. So that's a perfect complete sentence. You want to be reading through, making sure all of your sentences have a subject and a verb. And you'll want to go, okay, that's my subject, that's my verb. Do I have the correct tense for what I'm writing in? If I'm writing in present tense, are all of the verbs, are they all in present tense, right? Let's look at, so that is a complete sentence. The student is writing her paper so she can turn it in on time. Here's an example of a sentence fragment, and you want to avoid these. You want to circle them in your paper and make them complete sentences. Let's take a look at this one. When the students requested. Well, what's the subject? Students is the subject. Now there is a verb in here, requested, but because you have the opening phrase of you're setting it up like, well, when they did this, then something happened. And you're missing the outcome here. You're missing what happened after the when. Again here, after the class finished, right? You have a subject, you have a verb, but because you opened your sentences with these words, you're actually setting up the reader to expect something more. So the way that you can often recognize a sentence fragment is if you read it and you're like, well, then what happened? You haven't finished the sentence yet, and you need to come back in here. And typically it's when the students requested to leave early, comma, the professor said, sure, okay, or whatever. So you want to make sure that all of your sentences have the complete idea in them. Remember, a sentence is one complete idea, and these ideas are not yet complete. Let's look at run-on sentences. You want to be looking for these in your paper. I'll give you a trick. If you're reading your paper and one sentence goes more than 2 or 2.5 lines, okay, maybe I'll give you 3 lines of text. You want to make sure it's not a run-on sentence, that it doesn't keep going and going and going. It's actually 2 or 3 ideas that are put together but would be better as separate sentences. Let me read you this sentence. The student is writing her paper so she can turn it in on time. But when her computer crashed, she was left in tears because she hadn't yet finished, and she knew her professor would not accept it. Well, she has a typo there. After the deadline, which was already extended because she had been ill for 3 days already with the flu and still wasn't feeling well. First of all, you've got a typo right here. Should be it. But this sentence goes on and on and on and on. There are 3 different things happening here. The fact that she's writing it, the fact that her computer crashed, and she knew her professor wouldn't accept it, and she'd already been sick. So you actually could turn that into 4 sentences, okay? So you want to watch out for run-on sentences. So that's what I want you to be looking at for this pass through your paper. Step 2 of proofreading is making sure all of your sentences are complete. They have a subject, a verb, and an object, right? They can have a secondary clause on it to explain what's going on, but they can't be run-ons. They can't have more than one idea in the sentence. But they have to also make sure you have a complete idea. They're not fragments of ideas, all right? Give that a go.